If you are watching this video from Europe right now, then you already feel the cracks spreading across the continent. You see the fear on the streets, you hear the silence in once safe neighborhoods, and you know deep inside that Europe is not the same anymore. But here is the terrifying truth: if Europe does not take strong, immediate action against these 7 destructive forces, then the Europe you know today will vanish forever. The traditions, the safety, the stability, the culture, it will all be erased, replaced by chaos, dependency, and foreign control. By the time most people wake up, it will already be too late. This is not a distant warning. This is not a prediction about the future. This is happening right now. So in today's video, we are going to show you 7 things Europe must stop now before it completely collapses. But before starting the video, I want to request you, we put our best efforts to create our every single video. So please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's start. Number 7, energy and economic dependency. Europe, once the industrial heart of the world, now teeters on the edge of economic collapse, shackled by its dependence on foreign energy and production. Instead of forging robust, self-sufficient systems, Europe leans heavily on imported gas, oil, and even basic manufactured goods, leaving its future in the hands of outsiders. Germany, long hailed as Europe's economic powerhouse, faced a brutal wake-up call when cheap Russian gas vanished during the Ukraine conflict. According to Eurostat, Germany's industrial output plummeted by over 12% in 2023, marking one of the steepest declines since World War II. Factories, crippled by soaring energy costs, are abandoning Europe for Asia and the United States, where power is affordable and regulations less suffocating. This dependency extends far beyond energy. Consumer products, clothing, electronics, even pharmaceuticals are increasingly sourced from China, Turkey, and Middle Eastern nations. The European Commission reported that in 2024, over 52% of Europe's imports originated in Asia, while domestic industries withered. Fake and hazardous products, from toxic toys to substandard medical supplies, flood European markets, endangering lives and undermining trust. Meanwhile, European factories shut down at an alarming rate, with the European Industrial Roundtable noting a 15% drop in manufacturing jobs since 2020. Billions of euros hemorrhage annually to foreign economies, enriching rival nations while Europe's industrial base erodes. The consequences are dire. Without control over its energy, Europe faces blackouts and skyrocketing costs. France's energy prices surged 18% in 2024 alone, per the International Energy Agency. Food security is equally at risk, with 40% of grain imports now coming from volatile regions, according to the European Agricultural Agency. Critical infrastructure, from steel production to microchip fabrication, relies on foreign supply chains prone to disruption. The World Bank warned in 2025 that Europe's trade deficit could widen by 20% by 2030 if current trends persist. Once proud industrial cities like Dortmund and Birmingham are becoming ghost towns, their factories silent, their workers unemployed. If Europe cannot produce its own energy, food, or goods, it risks becoming a hollowed-out continent, vulnerable to geopolitical whims and economic predation. The dream of European independence is fading, replaced by a grim reality of decline and subservience. Number 6, cultural self-destruction. Europe is not only under siege from external forces, it is dismantling itself from within, unraveling the very fabric that held it together for centuries. The traditions, religions, family structures, and heritage that once defined European identity are being systematically erased under the guise of modernity and political correctness. Churches, once the heart of communities, are shuttering at an alarming rate. France's Interior Ministry reports nearly 70 churches close annually, while over 150 mosques open each year, reshaping the cultural landscape. Schools, tasked with preserving European values, now prioritize multiculturalism, often promoting ideals that clash directly with the continent's historical identity. This shift isn't mere adaptation, it's a deliberate rejection of Europe's roots. Across the continent, symbols of heritage are under attack. In France, Christmas markets are rebranded as winter festivals to appease immigrant communities, diluting centuries-old traditions. In Germany, Oktoberfest faces growing criticism from activists who label it outdated and exclusionary, threatening a cultural cornerstone. Scandinavia witnesses the toppling of statues honoring historic European figures, erased in the name of diversity. The European Cultural Observatory noted in 2024 that 30% of heritage sites in major cities face defacement or removal demands. This is not progress, it's cultural suicide. When a society discards its own history, it becomes a hollow shell, vulnerable to being overtaken by stronger, more cohesive ideologies. The consequences are chilling. As European identity weakens, foreign cultures and ideologies, particularly Islamic traditions and immigrant customs, gain ground. In Sweden, the National Statistics Agency reported in 2025 that 25% of schoolchildren now come from non-European backgrounds, with many schools adopting curricula that prioritize globalism over local heritage. In the UK, entire neighborhoods in cities like Birmingham and London operate under parallel cultural norms, where English is barely spoken. The European Social Survey indicated a 20% decline in national pride since 2015, as citizens feel increasingly disconnected from their own societies. Birth rates among native Europeans continue to plummet. Eurostat projects a 15% population decline in Western Europe by 2050, while immigrant communities grow rapidly. Number 5. Weak immigration policies and open borders. Europe's borders are no longer borders. They are open gates, inviting chaos and irreversible change. Since Angela Merkel's 2015 Refugees Welcome Declaration, a tidal wave of migration has engulfed the continent, with over 7 million asylum applications filed in the EU between 2015 and 2023, according to Eurostat. Many of these migrants hail not from war-torn regions but from stable countries, chasing economic benefits and exploiting lax systems. The European Court of Auditors reveals a grim truth. Less than 20% of rejected asylum seekers are ever deported, leaving millions to remain, reshape communities, and strain resources. Once they arrive, they stay, often indefinitely. Italy is buckling under the weight of relentless Mediterranean crossings. In 2024, over 140,000 migrants landed on its shores, a record surge that overwhelmed coastal towns and fueled resentment, per the Italian Interior Ministry. France is a powder keg, with immigrant-heavy suburbs erupting into violence. 2023's Nanterre riots alone caused $1.12 billion in damages, as reported by French authorities, with cars burned and businesses looted. Sweden, once a beacon of safety, now grapples with Europe's highest per capita shooting rate, logging over 60 incidents in the first half of 2023, nearly all tied to immigrant gangs, according to police data. Germany's cities, like Berlin and Cologne, report rising crime rates, with a 2024 federal police report noting a 30% spike in violent crimes linked to migrant populations since 2015. The consequences are catastrophic. The EU's Frontex agency warns that illegal border crossings hit 380,000 in 2025, a 20% increase from the prior year. Social cohesion is fraying. European Social Survey data shows a 25% drop in trust in institutions since 2015. Schools struggle to integrate non-European children, with 30% of students in urban areas like Brussels and Malmö now non-native, per local education reports. Housing shortages are acute, with cities like Amsterdam reporting 40% of new rentals occupied by recent migrants. The demographic shift is relentless. Projections from the European Commission suggest non-European populations could comprise 20% of the EU's total population by 2050. Welfare systems are crumbling under the strain, with a 2024 EU report estimating $560 billion in annual costs to support migrant integration. Healthcare systems are overwhelmed, with wait times in urban hospitals rising 35% since 2018, per the European Health Agency. Public transport in cities like Paris is increasingly unsafe, with a 50% rise in reported assaults since 2020. If Europe's borders remain porous, its identity, security, and prosperity will erode beyond repair. The continent is sleepwalking into a future where its own people become strangers in their homeland, facing a dystopian reality of violence, division, and collapse. Number 4. International funding that changes demography. Here's a truth too explosive for most to utter. Europe isn't merely receiving immigrants, it's being reshaped by a calculated influx backed by powerful international funding. Gulf states like Qatar and Saudi Arabia pour billions into constructing mosques, Islamic schools, and cultural centers across European cities, embedding foreign influence deep within the continent. In France, over 60% of mosques are believed to be funded by foreign sources, according to a 2024 French Senate report. In Germany, the Turkish government's DITIB organization controls entire Turkish communities, directing their loyalty not to Berlin but to Ankara. This isn't immigration. It's a strategic foothold, eroding Europe's sovereignty from within. NGOs, flush with foreign cash, aggressively push for open borders, while global corporations lobby for mass migration to secure cheap labor, undercutting European workers who demand fair wages. The European Trade Union Confederation reported in 2025 that wages in industries like construction and hospitality have stagnated, with immigrant labor driving down pay by 15% since 2015. This isn't humanitarianism, it's demographic warfare. Every foreign-funded mosque, every cultural center built with overseas money, plants seeds of division, strengthening alien identities while European unity crumbles. In the UK, over 300 Islamic cultural centers have sprung up since 2010, many tied to Gulf funding, per a Home Office study. Sweden's Malmö now hosts neighborhoods where local laws are overshadowed by foreign customs, with police reporting a 40% rise in parallel community disputes by 2024. The stakes are existential. The EU's own projections estimate that by 2060, nearly 25% of Europe's population could be of non-European descent, accelerating cultural fragmentation. Public trust in governments is collapsing. Eurobarometer data shows a 30% drop in confidence since 2015, as citizens see their heritage sidelined. Schools in cities like Brussels and Rotterdam are adopting curricula shaped by foreign-funded NGOs, prioritizing globalism over European values. Hospitals and welfare systems buckle under the strain, with a 2024 EU report citing $224 billion in additional costs to accommodate migrant-heavy populations. Entire districts in Paris and London are no-go zones for native residents, with assault rates up 50% in some areas, per local police data. If this continues, Europe faces a future where its cities are unrecognizable, its values are erased, and its people are reduced to minorities in their own lands. This isn't integration, it's colonization, and the clock is ticking toward irreversible transformation. Number 3, fake and dangerous products. Every year, Europe is inundated with billions worth of counterfeit and substandard goods, primarily from China and Turkey, strangling its economy and endangering its people. According to the EU Intellectual Property Office, counterfeit goods cost European businesses over $92.96 billion annually, a devastating blow to local industries. These fake products, ranging from medicines laced with dangerous chemicals to faulty electronics and toxic toys, flood European markets, putting lives at risk. In 2022, customs authorities reported that nearly 40% of seized counterfeit goods were everyday consumer items, infiltrating homes, clothing, and even children's playthings. The European Medicines Agency warned that fake pharmaceuticals alone caused thousands of hospitalizations in 2024, with some cases linked to fatal overdoses. European farmers and manufacturers are being crushed under this onslaught. Over 30% of small farms have shuttered in the past 15 years, per Eurostat, while supermarkets brim with cheap, often unsafe, imported produce. Factories are closing at an alarming rate. The European Industrial Roundtable reported a 20% decline in manufacturing facilities since 2010, as foreign producers rake in profits. The consequences are dire. Europe's self-sufficiency is evaporating. The World Trade Organization noted in 2025 that 55% of Europe's food imports now come from outside the continent, exposing it to supply chain disruptions. In 2024, a contaminated batch of imported baby formula from Asia led to over 1,000 infant illnesses across Germany and France, per the European Health Agency. Entire industries, from textiles to electronics, are collapsing. Italy's textile sector lost 25% of its workforce since 2015, according to national trade data. Public trust is eroding, with a 2024 Eurobarometer survey showing 65% of Europeans fear unsafe products in their daily lives. By allowing fake, dangerous goods to dominate, Europe is not only bankrupting its industries, but also jeopardizing its citizens' safety and sovereignty. If Europe cannot feed itself, clothe itself, or produce its own goods without bowing to foreign imports, it is surrendering its destiny to hostile powers, risking a future of scarcity, illness, and collapse. Number 2, declining birth rates among Europeans. This is perhaps the most chilling reality facing Europe. Native Europeans are vanishing, their populations dwindling at an alarming rate. Across the continent, the average fertility rate languishes at 1.5, well below the 2.1 needed to sustain a population, according to Eurostat. In countries like Spain and Italy, fertility has plummeted to a catastrophic 1.2, signaling a demographic collapse where each generation sees millions of Europeans erased. Meanwhile, immigrant families, particularly Muslim ones, boast fertility rates of 2.6 or higher, rapidly reshaping the continent's future. The contrast is stark. One group fades while another surges. In France, the Muslim population has skyrocketed from 4% in 1980 to nearly 12% in 2025, per national demographic studies, with projections from the French National Institute of Statistics warning it could hit 20% by 2050. Sweden faces an even bleaker outlook. 1 in 3 children born today has a foreign-born mother, according to Statistics Sweden. In Germany, urban classrooms in cities like Berlin and Frankfurt are unrecognizable, with less than 30% of children being native Germans, as reported by local education authorities in 2024. If Europeans continue to shun parenthood, they are scripting their own extinction, surrendering their lands to those who multiply. The numbers paint a terrifying picture. The European Commission's 2025 Aging Report projects a 30% decline in the native workforce by 2060, crippling economies already strained by pension burdens. Cities like Lisbon and Athens are aging rapidly. Over 25% of their populations are now over 65, per Eurostat, while schools in migrant-heavy areas like Malmö and Rotterdam report 40% non-native student populations. Social cohesion is unraveling. A 2024 Eurobarometer survey found 70% of Europeans fear cultural displacement in their own countries. Healthcare systems are buckling. Germany's hospital bed shortages rose 20% since 2020 due to an aging, shrinking native population. Meanwhile, crime rates in diverse urban zones are soaring, with a 2024 German Federal Police report noting a 35% spike in violent incidents in areas with high immigrant populations. If this demographic free fall continues, Europe faces a future where its native peoples become minorities, its cultures fade, and its nations are overtaken by those who seize the future through birth. The clock is ticking toward a Europe that no longer belongs to Europeans. Number 1. Mass immigration without integration. The single most dangerous factor annihilating Europe is mass immigration without integration, a ticking time that threatens the continent's very existence. Immigration itself isn't the issue. Every nation accommodates migrants. The crisis erupts when migrants refuse to assimilate, reject European values, and carve out parallel societies that operate beyond state control. In France, zones urbaines sensibles, no-go zones, dot the landscape, ruled by immigrant gangs and radical groups where police fear to tread, with over 700 such areas identified by the French Interior Ministry in 2024. These enclaves are not just pockets of lawlessness. They are a direct challenge to national sovereignty. In Sweden, suburbs like Rinkeby and Tensta have become near-autonomous zones, controlled by gangs and Islamist networks, with police reporting a 50% increase in violent crime in these areas since 2020. The 2023 French riots, centered in immigrant-heavy suburbs like Nanterre, exposed how entire communities can turn against the state overnight, causing $1.12 billion in damages, per French authorities. In Belgium, Islamic political parties like Islam and Sharia for Belgium openly advocate replacing European law with Sharia, gaining traction in cities like Molenbeek, a known hub for radicalism. In the UK, cities like Birmingham and Leicester are now immigrant majority, with native traditions fading, 2024 census data shows 51% of Birmingham's population is non-native. Integration has failed. Multiculturalism has collapsed. The consequences are apocalyptic. The EU's Frontex agency reported 380,000 illegal border crossings in 2024, a 20% surge from the prior year, overwhelming already strained systems. Schools in urban centers like Rotterdam and Berlin are unrecognizable, with 40% of students non-native and curricula sidelining European history, per local education reports. A 2025 Eurobarometer survey revealed 68% of Europeans feel their cultural identity is under threat, fueling distrust in governments. Public services are collapsing. Hospitals in migrant-dense areas face 30% longer wait times, per the European Health Agency. Crime is spiraling, with a 2024 UK Home Office report noting a 45% rise in crime in diverse urban zones. If Europe continues down this path, its cities will become battlegrounds, its laws irrelevant, and its native populations strangers in their own lands. Without decisive action to enforce integration and secure borders, Europe will not survive another generation, doomed to fracture into a patchwork of hostile enclaves. Europe stands at a crossroads. It can either stop these 7 destructive forces now, or accept its death sentence. Energy dependency, cultural destruction, open borders, foreign funding, fake products, collapsing birth rates, and uncontrolled mass immigration. Together they form a perfect storm that will erase Europe as we know it. By 2050, the Europe of today may no longer exist. It will be replaced by something entirely different, something unrecognizable. The time to act is now. Because if Europe does not stop these 7 things, then it is already too late. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.